Record. We're recording. Wow. All right, so make it big. And you have the double sound, so let me turn it off on this one. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay, hold on. Let me do the from the beginning. All right, so this is Understanding Autism. And so what I do want everybody to understand is that autism is definitely a spectrum. And I don't know if you have family members, if you have a child that is on the spectrum, it's definitely a disorder that is really misunderstood. It's a communication disability and social disability. And what happens is in the prefrontal cortex in the front, and that's where ADHD is housed as well. There's a lot of firing going on, and there is disconnect, and it prevents a person from being able to connect. So with autism, you will see that you will have to help a person with autism to connect the dots. So what I want to talk about today is motivation. Oh, shucks. Okay, so with anybody, any form of behavior, anybody that is yelling, anybody that is being calm and relaxed, anybody that is expressing themselves, there's always a motivation behind behaviors. For a person who is on the autism spectrum, if you see them rocking back and forth, if you see them looking to the side, or looking and holding their hand up, something like this, or turning the light switch on and off, there's always a motivation behind the behavior. And the way you want to respond is based on the motivation behind the behavior. And there's usually 4 different motivations behind behavior. It's either for attention, it's either to gain access to something, it's either to avoid or escape something, or it's either something internal. So internal can be sensory stimulating. Avoidance, escape can be sensory avoiding or escaping. So you might see a person on the spectrum putting their hands over their ears. They might hear a loud sound and it might bother them. You might see them turning the light switch on and off. They might enjoy the light, seeing the light flicker on and off, or they might enjoy the fact that now they understand cause and effect, and they can actually do something that causes something to, have an effect. Because a lot of times when we are working with younger children on the spectrum, toddlers, they have a hard time playing with toys in a functionally appropriate manner. So you have to teach them and connect the dots with them. So what do we do when we have children, or so what we lost my train of thought. So if you see someone who is having a tantrum, right? Or a child, a person who is having a tantrum, you want to understand what is the motivation behind the behavior. Typically what parents want to do is they want it to stop. And the reason why a person or a child on the spectrum is having a tantrum is because they know that that's going to be reinforced. They know that that tantrum is going to get them what they want. Or they're going to get the attention. They don't know how to get attention in the right manner if the tantrum is for attention. If it's to gain access to something. If you see a child on the spectrum who's overweight, the parents probably give them food that they want when they act out, or when they are just expressing difficult behaviors. So what we want to do is really understand the motivation behind the behavior. And I have resources for you to understand the motivation behind the behavior, but that won't be today. Or avoid. What do you do when a child is having a tantrum and they're avoiding a task, and they're trying to escape doing, or a person is trying to escape doing what you want of them, a teenager? What we have to do is we have to start from the beginning, and we have to create an environment of control. right? You don't want to let them go through life thinking that they're going to get their way all of the time. It's not conducive to the real world. So I have a video that I want to show you. Hold on. Not to work. Do not throw anything. Give me. Give me. Give me. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Do not throw anything. Do you hear me? No throwing. No throwing. Thank you. Okay, so this baby is near and dear to my heart. He's my family member. So you saw that I had to gain his attention, and request of him. So what generally happens in families, when I come around, he will use his words. When I'm not around, he doesn't use his words. And I don't come around often because they live very far away from me. He will usually like clap his hands. He can speak in sentences, but it's a lot of work to have a person or a child on the spectrum to use their words when it's easier to just give to them. So you want to hold back, because the goal is you want to think of the vision for your child. Like, where do you want your child to be? It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you have to have a team of people on your side that's going to help you. But what he wanted to do was he wanted to get my attention. He wanted to get my attention in the way that he's used to getting attention. And he's not used to someone stopping him and letting him know, like, that's not okay. And to use his words. So what I did was I commanded his attention. I made him use his eyes, and I made him use his words to repeat after me what was expected of him. And he was able to do that. And I want to give you another scenario. Close out of that one. Often, children on the spectrum, people on the spectrum, remember I talked about the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe being also housed where ADHD is housed. So they have a hard time with focusing and executing and being in control of their impulses, right? So what he had a challenge with is a lot of times parents and people will be okay with children just grabbing and not waiting or being in control of themselves around items that they are interested in, and they will just let them grab things. But in the real world, it doesn't work like that. So this is a situation where, or an example of how I was able to help him to be in control of himself. So Joshua was doing everything to get my attention. So part of me looking down is to not give him attention when he's clapping hands. You don't want to reinforce them by giving them the visual attention. So that's why I was looking down. Don't touch. I said don't touch. He had to wait until I took all the dolls out and placed them in order until he can touch them. And now he has to put them all together. And you don't want to be so quick to help them work through something. You want to try to give them time to try to figure things out. And he figured it out. And praised them right away. So he was able to work through it. He was able to work through it and make progress. But the biggest part was him waiting to, and I closed out the PowerPoint, and him waiting to make progress. So you want to contrive the environment by controlling the material that is around. You want to be calm within yourself, within your spirit, and you want to organize your schedule, your calendar, so that you're not in a rush, because children and people do feed off of our energy, so that you can set the tone for your family and the people that you work with, if you are a clinician that's working with people or children on the spectrum. And it's always good to help them to understand what you are expecting of them by telling them, and use
close my door, please.
Short phrases. Don't give them a lot of information at one time, because like I said, they need help connecting the dots. That's with information as well. So when you're giving them too much information, stringing too much information together, it's way too much for them. So that is what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Motivations behind behavior, and control, being able to control and not allowing tantrums to happen, understanding that you have to respond to different tantrums or different ways of behaving in a different manner based on the motivation behind the behavior. And that is it. So I wanted to put up our information, but I'll let go of the PowerPoint. It's gone. So does anybody have, oh, here it is. Does anybody have any questions? Here it is. Let me share this. This is the time for questions. Does anybody have any family members or people that they work with where they have challenges with behaviors that they don't know how to manage, of children or people on the spectrum? So nobody has challenges. You guys can unmute yourself, because I didn't mute you and I don't know how to do it. Or you can put it in the chat. Thank you. Is there a difference between a tantrum and an autistic meltdown? So I don't call a person autistic because that defines a person. So I will always say a person with autism. So I would say a tantrum and a meltdown would be, they might be similar. It just depends on the situation. You really have to understand the person and what's going on. They can have sensory overload. That would be a difference. But you really have to understand if they're really trying to manipulate you or the situation, because just because a person is on the spectrum does not mean they're not intelligent. And they will push the button, push your buttons. They know who is who and what they can get away with each and every person, I promise you. And they will push the envelope. So you have to pay attention to see if it's if it's like a sensory overload thing. It could be if it's too much noise, that will be a different situation. Or if it's like something touching them that is a different consistency that's very uncomfortable for them, that will be something totally different than a tantrum, Caitlin. So in that instance, you will want to expose them slowly to different textures. It's my pleasure. Does anybody else have any questions? Do you guys see this this screen with our information? Be sure to subscribe to social.givinghopeLLC.org. Do y'all see the screen? Yay or nay? Can somebody? Yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay. So be sure to follow us on social.givinghopeLLC.org. We'll be back next month, the first Thursday at 8:30. We'll be giving more information, understanding autism. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. We're at Giving Hope LLC. And if you have any questions, be sure to reach out to us. We thank you so much for your time and considering us on tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, y'all. God bless you. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.